The events of this story take place between the years 2020 and 2023. It may seem illogical to many, as even the ones who live the story do not find a logical explanation for it. The beginning was in 2020, when the pandemic was imposed on all countries of the world due to the spread of the coronavirus. And here most companies took the decision to complete work, but from home, so workers do not have to go out to work on a daily basis, and even receiving a salary or purchasing basic needs has become remotely. Although these procedures were confusing, worrying, and bad for many, there were a large number of people who felt happy and freed from the bad daily routine, especially with regard to waking up early and using public transportation in order to get to their work. And among them was Brandon, the hero of our story today. Brand was a young man in his late 20s, and he worked in the field of customer service in one of the open channel services companies, answering their inquiries, providing technical support remotely, and other tasks that Brand performed every day. He had many hobbies that he loved to practice, such as cooking, making pottery, drawing, and recently making candles and soap at home. Of course, because of work and going down every day, he did not have enough time to practice these hobbies, except during the weekend. Therefore, when Brandon's company made the decision to transfer work from home, Brandon felt happy and that he had all the time, so he could do all the hobbies that he loves so much. Indeed, Brandon was keen on a daily basis to prepare the most delicious dishes for himself, and he also allocated specific times in his day in order to practice all the hobbies that he loved, despite the increase in the percentage of calls he received due to everyone being in their homes and constantly needing support because, of course, they watch television for longer times. But on a daily basis, Brandon was able to do many activities he liked. After several months, Brandon learned that there was an opportunity for advancement. The advantages were many, especially financial ones, but the opportunity for advancement required that Brandon move from his home in the city to one of the distant suburbs. Brandon thought about the matter and felt that this opportunity would be ideal for him, as he had been dreaming of it for a long time. Leaving the city with all its crowding and noise, he always dreamed of an independent house where he could adopt a dog, especially since the apartment he lives in is in a residential building where pets are not allowed, and that area will be quieter and less busy, which will give him a greater opportunity to practice his hobbies without disturbance. He decided to accept the offer and leave the entire city and go to rent a house in that new area, and Brandon thought that if he felt comfortable in this place, perhaps he would buy a house to settle there permanently. Within about 2 weeks, Brandon moved into the new house that he saw and liked online, and he also paid the rental fees before moving in. The move was not difficult because Brandon had rented the last apartment with all its furnishings, and it seems that his good luck happened again because the house he rented was also furnished with pieces that all looked new and beautiful. And although all of this was perfect for Brandon, he felt strange because the house he rented was cheap compared to all the other houses offered in the area. But Brandon thought that the secret of low price may be that the house was smaller than every other house in the area. The house was composed of 2 floors. The first floor had a large living room that included a dining table, a kitchen, and a small bathroom, while the second floor consisted of only 2 rooms and a bathroom. Brandon was not bothered by that because he was alone, so the space was completely appropriate. He doesn't need more than that. Brandon moved to his new house and felt happy when he arrived there. The pictures that Brandon saw on the website did not do the house justice. Everything was perfect, and the furniture looked completely new. The most beautiful thing Brandon saw in his house was the large balcony on the first floor that overlooked on the small garden of the house. The garden was full of beautiful small roses, which made Brandon decide to buy the house because he knew that he fell in love with this house at first sight. Brandon settled in the house and began arranging his things. He made sure to allocate a part on the first floor to all his hobbies, which made him feel comfortable and excited to start living what he dreamed of for a long time in this house. While Brandon was arranging all his things in the house, he heard the sound of a knock on the door, and here he went. He immediately opened the door, and when he opened it, he found a man in his mid-30s standing in front of him, smiling, holding a jar full of biscuits, offering it to him, and telling him that his name is Sam. He lived in the house next to him, and that these biscuits were a gift for him moving here. Brandon felt happy, as the neighbors also seemed to be kind, and the matter did not stop there. Sam insisted that Brandon come in the evening to have dinner with him and his family, and told him that he would wait for him at 7:30. Brandon could not refuse, and in fact he was excited because he would get to know his new neighbors. In the evening, Brandon got dressed after he finished packing most of his things in the new house and decided to carry some of the candles and soap that he made himself as a gift for his new neighbors, especially since he was unable to go to the store to buy anything to give them. Brandon walked on the sidewalk, and only seconds later he found himself in front of Sam's house. Here he looked at the houses around him and was sure that his house was the smallest of all the houses. Brandon knocked on the door and a young girl opened for him, and then Sam came from behind her. He welcomed Brandon and invited him in, and then a woman who appeared to be close in age to Sam came. Brand thought that she must be Sam's wife, and here that woman greeted him, and Sam recognized her as Lisa, his wife. Brandon thanked her on the invitation and gave her the bag in which he put soap and wax in it, and he told her that he made them with his own hand. Lisa thanked him for that gift, which she liked very much. Brand entered Sam and Lisa's house and met their little children. The boy's name was Roger, and the girl's name was Rose. They were both beautiful and not annoying at all, especially since each of them was busy with something. Roger was playing with Lego while Rose was drawing a garden full of flowers. Brandon told her that he also loved drawing very much and that he could help her, and he actually started helping her draw some things, and she was very happy. But soon Lisa came and told everyone that dinner was ready. They moved to the other room where the dining table was, and it was clear that the design of Sam and Lisa's house was completely different, which is what Brandon commented on, expressing his admiration for the house. And then Sam told him that the house that Brandon had rented was attached to this house, but when the area began to flourish, the owner of the house decided to deal with it as two separate houses in order to benefit from the rental value of the two houses instead of one. And Sam told him that the owner told him a week ago that he would rent the house, so he decided to go there to welcome him and invite him to dinner to make him feel welcome in the neighborhood. It was a happy evening that Brandon spent with Sam and Lisa's family, and then he excused himself to go home because he felt very tired, and he had to go to sleep because he wanted to finish everything tomorrow, because he was supposed to start work the day after tomorrow, so he had to finish everything quickly. Brandon returned to his house and closed the doors, making sure that the security system was working well. Then he went upstairs and lay down on the bed, and within seconds he fell into a deep sleep. Beautiful, peaceful days passed for Brandon, who was attached to his home more every day than the day before. He was always thinking about saving some of his expenses in order to save up to buy the house, because he thought it was an ideal place to start a family and raise young children, especially since he saw Sam and Lisa's children and felt their happiness, which encouraged him even more to those ideas. The relationship between Sam and Brandon was strong, and it gradually turned into a friendship. Brandon's relationship with the rest of the neighbors was not bad at all. He was kind to everyone and always made sure to greet them when he saw them. From time to time, Sam asked Brandon to babysit Rose and Roger, and Brandon was not bothered at all because he loved these children so much. One cold, dark night, Brandon heard a strong screaming sound coming from Sam and Lisa's house. It was a scream. This was the voice of little Rose. Then Brandon decided to go and see what was happening. He was worried that any of them had been exposed to something bad. He found Lisa stood and held both Rose and Roger with a look of terrible terror on her face. Rose was crying hard, and Roger looked very worried, and it clearly seemed that something bad had happened to them. Brandon approached them and tried to talk to Lisa and ask her what happened. At this point, Lisa began to tremble and told him that she was sure that there was someone in the house. She did not see anything, but she heard and felt him wandering between the rooms. She was certain of this because Rose saw someone moving, but she did not know if it was a man or a woman, and that's why she decided to carry the two children and quickly leave the house. Brandon asked her about Sam, and she told him that Sam was working the night shift and wouldn't be back for hours, and that's why she didn't know what to do. So she went out with them in order to escape with her children and to call the police. Here, Brandon asked her to take the children and enter his house and call the police from there, and he told her that he would enter her house to check if there was anyone inside. Lisa immediately went to Brandon's house with her children, while Brandon walked toward Sam and Lisa's house. The house was dark completely from the inside. There is no light, there is no sound, there is nothing. Brandon tried to look for any light in the house, but the light did not work, and here Brandon felt very afraid and did not know why. So he left the house, and when he looked at the house from the outside, specifically to the upper floor, he found that the light of one of the rooms was on. Brandon did not understand how this happened. He had just tried the light, and it did not work. He even thought that there was a problem with the electricity in the house. Only seconds passed, and the light of the room went out. Brandon stood, not understanding what was happening, but it caught his attention that there was another room in the house that had light, and when he looked at it, he found that there was a woman standing in the window. Well, she was not an ordinary woman. It could be said that she was the ghost of a dead woman. She was wearing a white dress with long sleeves, and she had black hair falling on her shoulders. Her face looked as pale as the dead. It was terrifying. Brandon could not even look away from her, but when the light went out again, he moved quickly toward his house. He was clearly frightened. When he entered the house, he asked Lisa, "Did you call the police or not?" Lisa told him that she had called the police and that they were on their way. And then Lisa asked him if he found anything in the house. Brandon could not say anything. He only told her that she had to wait until the police arrive. Brandon sat next to Rose trying to calm her down, but to no avail. Only minutes passed, and the police car arrived and entered Sam and Lisa's house. The electricity was working perfectly and all the lights were lit normally. The police searched the entire house and did not find anything, and before the police car leave, Sam arrived. He was very afraid for his family, and when he was reassured by what the police said, he carried Rose and held Roger's hand, and Lisa walked alongside him to their house. The police asked Brandon if he saw anything or someone inside the house, but Brandon denied that he saw anything because he did not know what to tell the police. How could anyone believe that he saw a dead woman standing in the window of the house? The next day, everything was fine and nothing strange happened, and the days passed normally until the Christmas period came, and Sam and Lisa decided to go with the children to grandfather and grandmother's house because they had not seen the children for a very long time due to the quarantine. At the time, Brandon had adopted a small dog and used to take him out to the garden and let Rose and Roger play with the dog. The children loved the dog very much, and Brandon loved it and considered him one of his most important friends. When it was time for Sam, Lisa, and the children to go, they said goodbye to the little dog, and Rose hugged him. But the strange thing is that since the family left, the dog has been standing in front of the bedroom window that overlooks Sam and Lisa's house in the middle of the night. He started making sounds of fear every day in the middle of the night, which made Brandon stand behind him and look out the window, and then he saw her again. Yes, the same woman he had seen at Sam and Lisa's house before. She was standing in the window directly facing him, looking at him, with a face that had no life in it, just looking at him without moving or doing anything. It was terrifying, and Brandon thought he was imagining, but it happened more than once, so Brandon decided to close that window and not open it again at night, and to leave the little dog downstairs, so that it does not make those annoying sounds. Finally, Sam, Lisa, and the children returned home, and Brandon welcomed them very much and even invited them to dinner, which he had prepared himself at his house. He began talking to Sam about the house, its history, and whether he knew the people who had lived in it before. Here, Sam told him that he had rented the house only 2 months before Brandon came, and what he paid to rent the house was its low price compared to the rest of the house prices in that area. And here Brandon felt that something about both houses, his house and Sam's house, was not right, but he pretended that everything was fine and sat down to eat dinner properly with the family. Brandon noticed that the lady who used to appear in the window no longer appeared, and even the little dog no longer stood in front of the window or made the sounds he used to make. So Brandon dropped the topic and did not think about it again, and assured himself that this was probably exhaustion or his subconscious mind was playing tricks on him. The following days passed normally, and one afternoon there was a knock on his door. Lisa was standing in front of him. She did not say anything, so Brandon invited her in. But after Lisa entered the house, Brandon heard the sounds of Rose and Roger playing in the garden, and when he looked at them, he found that Lisa was standing with them. She was playing ball with them, and then Brandon felt afraid. If Lisa was standing in front of him in the garden of her house, who was the woman he had just allowed into the house? Here, Brandon went out to the front porch, and fortunately his phone was in his pocket. He immediately called the police, who came in less than 5 minutes and entered to search the house according to Brandon's wishes, but they did not find anything in the house. The police car left after the search and reassuring Brandon that there was nothing there. But despite all that, fear resided in Brandon's heart. Brandon was unable to sleep that night, and he felt anxious and tense all the time, especially with the increasing barking of the small dog, who did not stop every day standing in front of the door of the house as if he wanted to go out, barking and growling, which why Brandon was forced to return the dog to the shelter he had previously adopted him from because he had become completely unable to sleep. He basically had trouble sleeping, and the dog was adding to the problem. Brandon could not bear to live in the house any longer and decided to pack his things and leave to return to the city again. The owner of the house did not accept to return the rest of the rent amount to Brandon, and Brandon did not care at all because he did not want to be in this house and did not want anything related to it. That's why he gathered his things and quickly returned to the city. He didn't even pay attention to saying goodbye to Sam, Lisa, and the children, but he contented himself with sending them a message explaining that he had encountered an emergency that made him leave quickly, and that's why he couldn't say goodbye to them before going. Sam understood the matter and told him that everyone wished him good luck. Brandon rented a new apartment similar to his old apartment and began to settle down again. Fortunately, Brandon was able to sleep again. Brand tried to forget the past period completely, to the point that he refused to talk to anyone about the reasons that pushed him to leave the house so quickly, especially that everyone knew how much Brandon loved this house. But he didn't say anything and kept it all to himself. 2 months after Brandon returned to the city, he found a post on Facebook in which Lisa announced that they had moved to another house. Brand hesitated a lot to ask her about the matter, but finally he dared to send her a message to congratulate her on the new house and ask her about the reason for the move. Here, Lisa confirmed all his doubts. She told him that she and the children saw and heard strange things happening in the house, and Rose told her a lot about the woman who wears a white dress and stands between the rooms in the house every day at midnight, and that is why Lisa and Sam decided to leave the house out of concern for the safety and psychological well-being of the children and the entire family. 3 years have passed since that incident, and it cannot be said that Brandon has completely forgotten about it. But he no longer thinks about it all the time as he used to, but one time a friend sent him a link to the news of a murder and asked him if this was the same house he had previously lived in. Brandon opened the link and found a picture of his former home before his eyes. He felt like he was breathing hard while reading the news. He knew that there was a couple who lived in the house, but they were found slaughtered in a horrific way in the bedroom. The police did not find the killer, and even though this news was terrifying, but the comments written by many people were even more terrifying. Everyone confirmed that this house has been haunted for 100 years or more, and that anyone who lives in it ends up in a tragic end. Only the lucky ones can escape from the house before it is too late. Brandon did not leave a single comment without reading it, and here he learned the shocking story. The small house that he rented was one day attached to the large house. Servants lived in the small house, and it was then divided into small rooms with the ladies at the top and the men at the bottom, while the family that owned the house lived in the big house, and this family had a playboy son who liked to harass the maids. One time, a new maid came to the house. She was young and beautiful, and so he could not control himself in front of her and decided to try with her, but she repulsed him more than once, and here he went too far and went to her room. In the small house, all the servants watched him go up to her room, and none of them dared to prevent him. They all also heard the sound of her screaming from her room as she tried to push him away from her and expel him from the room. At that time, he could not control himself and began to approach her. The matter developed when the girl threatened to kill him, but he easily managed to. He dropped the knife from her hand, then approached her and grabbed her from behind. When the girl hit him, he slaughtered her, left her soaked in blood, and ran away from the house. The family did not know what to do in this disaster, especially since the servants wanted to inform the police. At that time, the family decided to make only 2 options for the servants. The first was to accuse one of the servants of being the murderer, and the second was for everyone to remain silent in exchange for some money. At that time, all the servants felt afraid and decided to agree to the second option. Indeed, the girl was buried in the garden of the small house, and from that time both houses became haunted, especially when anyone comes to live in the small house. And here Brandon realized everything that happened and the reason that prompted the owner to separate the small house from the big one, the low price, and he felt relieved that he escaped from this house before he ended up like the couple who were recently killed.